I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this event. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to share my experiences with you this morning. While preparing for this talk, I read a beautiful piece in the Columbia Journalism Review by Philip Isle, a freelancer from Providence, Rhode Island. His article was entitled, "An Ode to Reporters' Notebooks." We've all seen portrayals of journalists on television shows and movies, notebooks in hand, scribbling furiously. For Isle, however, a reporter's notebook is more than paper and cardboard. It symbolizes the power and uniqueness of journalism as a profession. In his words, this object is a license to talk to interesting people and a ticket to interesting places. The key to bringing these people and places to life, Isle writes, is to capture and convey the details of a reporter's notebook. Capture the details. And the reporter's notebook is how he captures the sights, smells, sounds, feelings, tastes, and other impressions of the world. To report is to be alert and alive in a particular time and place. I think that's worth repeating. To report is to be alert and alive in a particular time and place. Now, my training is not in journalism, but statistics. When I arrived at the journalism school, I was told over and over that journalism is less an academic discipline than it is a habit of mind. We cultivate in our students a curiosity about the world, a restless, questioning spirit that asks why things look the way they do. And my role as a statistician in a journalism school is to add computational lines of inquiry to this habits of mind. If you take one thing from my talk this morning, it's that just as a reporter's notebook represents a call to be alert and alive in a particular time and place, understanding the computing systems we rely on daily opens our eyes to new aspects of the world, to see and interrogate the algorithms that increasingly govern how our society functions. And just as the reporter's notebook symbolizes that call to be alert and alive, for me, in my teaching, the Jupyter Notebook extends that alertness and curiosity to the virtual world of data, code, and algorithms. In some sense, my mission at the J School is not new. Joseph Pulitzer himself, the founder of our school at Columbia, wrote in the North American Review in 1904 about his College of Journalism and recommended what should be taught to promote the welfare of the public. In this essay, in addition to law, ethics, and history, which we still teach today, he includes statistics, data. He writes, "Everybody says that statistics should be taught, but how? Statistics is not simply figures. It's said that nothing lies like figures except the facts. If you want statistics to tell you the truth, you can find the truth there if you know how to get at it, and romance, human interest, humor, and fascinating revelations as well." Now think of that for a second. Romance, human interest, humor from data. Pulitzer saw tremendous narrative power in data. Today at Columbia, about half of our graduating class takes some kind of data elective. We offer a separate MS in data journalism and even dual degree with computer science, and we're not alone. Last year, we authored a report on the state of computation in journalism education in the United States. For those of you who are interested, there are also annual meetings of computational and data journalists you could attend, like NICAR and Newsgeist. You'll find Python tutorials and introductions to R, and yes, plenty of Jupyter. All of this is in response to the simple fact that data, code, and algorithms, all manner of computing technologies, wield real power in our society, and journalists need to be able to see and then interrogate that power. Again, we want our students to be alert and alive in a particular time and place, but now fully aware of the virtual as well as physical systems shaping the world around them. Each spring, I teach a course on computational journalism at the J School. Given the techno-political dimensions of the 2016 election last year, we introduced a theme to anchor the course. We called it computational propaganda. Here is a list of most of the topics we covered. Before going too far, I should reiterate my use of the platform of choice in the J School is the Jupyter Notebook. I use it for both R as well as Python, and here's a few of our notebooks. Some basics on Python, maybe how the web works, how machines learn, how influence around hashtags has become a new kind of political argument. After all, who was responsible for the shutdown of the government last spring? Was it Trump or Schumer? Let's see which hashtag trended and find out. We build bots, some on the Alexa platform, and then some on Twitter. And I'm going to take bots as a kind of case study to represent what we did in the class and how computation fit into journalism for the rest of this talk, because bots have been particularly influential in all manners of political processes, from voting to participation in the census, and fill out your census forms. As you know, bots serve various different purposes. There are bots that notify. Here's one that alerts you when a word appears for the first time on the front page of the New York Times, and another that live tweets earthquakes from the San Francisco Bay Area. Then there are bots that inform. Every track is busy tweeting out a satellite image of every census tract in the United States. And finally, there are bots that amplify. What do I mean by that? Well, this is John Leguizamo's Twitter page, and here is one of his tweets. "I'm good, you?" Somehow, this statement earned him 34 likes and 4 retweets. Who are the people who find this worthwhile to amplify? Well, CP Alarcon, for one, a faceless account that has liked 46,000 other tweets in 8 years, or Kim Hill. And you have to wonder how she had time to pose for this image, given that she's liked 86,000 tweets in 2 years, about 10 tweets an hour for 12 hours a day, every day of the year. And then you have Marquise Martinez. His account looks more respectable until you read that he's from Americus, a city in Georgia, and claims to be the dean of the Harvard Medical School. But he does caution that his tweets are his own. One of the first issues we tackled in class then with bots was how we could be sure if an account was in fact a person or a bot. It's a dark art, but offered us the opportunity to teach the students something about machine learning. There are services that can help, but they're noisy. Marquis is clearly a bot. But then again, you can simply do a Google image search on his profile picture and find that this poor man is associated with names like Gabriel, Sam, and Arthur on different platforms. As another example, in looking at the fake news surrounding the Parkland shooting this year, we found that one of the most active accounts in promoting the sort of fake news hashtag crisis actors was an account Tokay's. 86,000 tweets in 2 years. Human? Well, bot or not says yes. So it's a messy business. But given all this, our next step was to see what kind of influence we as a class could have. What kinds of messages could we amplify? So we opened a Twitter account, called it Rosie Turing. A Google search then turned up a doorway to our popularity. We could simply buy followers. We selected a company, Devumi, that seemed highly rated, which only later we realized was because the company's CEO was an SEO expert. It promised amazing growth, and the process was simple. Essentially, you pay them, and the followers would come flocking. And so we did, and so they did. We bought about 2,500 in total. I expected accounts like CP Alarcon, Kim Hill, or Marquise Martinez, and instead we had accounts like these. They looked great. Their biopics matched the background images. Facebook and Instagram links pointed to accounts featuring the same people. These were real, I thought. But the economics didn't work out. We paid a couple of pennies for each follower, so why would someone do anything for a couple pennies? It just didn't make sense. But then we noticed a tell. A clever bot maker had simply lifted people's data and created a new account with a slightly altered name. Lowercase L's became I's and vice versa. Zeros for O's and underscores became doubled. The strategy worked so well because the actual login name appears only in small gray letters on the Twitter interface or maybe up in the URL. The bot maker was indiscriminate. Young, old, singles, couples, adults, minors, all transformed into bots that went on to tweet or retweet statuses from Devumi's various clients in multiple languages, often political, often heavily pornographic. I'm going to skip over these. Right, I'm not skipping over anything. Oops. So from our 2,500 followers that we purchased, we crawled up and down the network to find out who else these accounts were following, their so-called friends, and presumably their clients. Hillary Rosen, a commentator for CNN, for example, shared 2,400 of our 2,500 followers, which seemed suspicious. And then we went back down the network from our followers and friends to find their followers and friends, hoping to find more bots. We spidered the network and came up with 50,000 or so stolen identities, sometimes stolen multiple times. In all, our work was done on a Jupyter notebook. After this, we decided we had a story. So over martinis one evening at NICAR, another reason to go to NICAR, we brought it up to the Times and made a pitch. So my students gave a pitch. And a year later, and a lot of computation under the bridge, this appeared. Buying online influence from a shadowy market. I don't know how many of you have been on page A1 above the fold on a Sunday, but let me tell you, that's kind of exciting. And then online, online, there's a beautiful interactive that I would direct you to. So here's some examples of people that we found. This is Chef Simon. He's an Iron Chef and a co-host of ABC's The Chew. He bought hundreds of thousands of followers from Devumi. And you can see hints of this by looking at his followers. These are easily obtained from the Twitter API. Each blue dot on this graph is a follower. On the x-axis is the order they followed the chef, and the y-axis is the year they joined Twitter. This graph goes to about 2013, his first few years on Twitter. And everything kind of looked okay. This is what organic growth looks like when you start to have followers follow you on Twitter. There's a slow hill because as time goes by, people who are joining Twitter later find your account and follow you. But if you look at his followers going up until last summer, this is what you see. The stripes indicate accounts that followed the chef all about the same time and also joined Twitter at about the same time. This is a clear indication of bot accounts, as bot makers will often make their accounts in bulk, and perhaps because they acquired a list of stolen email addresses at one time. Here's a similar pattern, and this is where it gets unfortunate. For Hillary Rosen's followers, here's Martha Lane Fox. For those of you who don't know her, she's a Twitter board member. That one hurt. And you can look at the article for others. There are sports figures, there are entertainers, and so on, all trying to amplify their message through purchasing followers. The story behind the company Devumi is itself fascinating. They claim to be on Varick Street, but we're in. So my students thought we could just interview them, but instead they were in Palm Beach, and now they simply aren't taking clients at all. It turns out they don't really make any of these bots themselves. It's an arbitrage scheme with Devumi buying followers on behalf of clients from a third party, manufacturers advertising mainly on Black Hat World. That means most of their business is accounting. And through services like Peeker, you can buy and sell any manner of fake engagements, everything from LinkedIn followers to, well, you name it. The fallout from our article was pretty intense. Actually, I'll start here. Hacker News said essentially, if a bunch of journalists could do this, why can't Twitter's engineers? Which I took as slightly insulting, as the whole purpose of the class was to prepare journalists to do this anyway. But a couple people are embarrassed. Some threw their aides under the bus. Some claimed that they believed that the followers they bought were real, which didn't seem to be an excuse for me. But anyway, attorneys general in different states opened cases, and the Senate directed the FCC to look at impersonation, and lots of bots died seemingly overnight. And then, ultimately, last month, Twitter went farther and purged tens of millions of accounts, citing our story as a rationale. And this is why my slide about 10 slides back had to borrow some graphics from the digital forensics lab, because the purge happened and we hadn't had a chance to screen cap anything. I can't believe we didn't do that. Again, if you remember one thing from this talk, it's that just as the reporter's notebook represents a call to be alert and alive in a particular time and place, computation, teaching journalists to program, extends that alertness and curiosity to the virtual world of data, code, and algorithms. They are now able to interrogate the systems that bring us information every day, systems that are often driven by opaque algorithms. Philip Isle finishes his ode to a reporter's notebook, commenting that perhaps most importantly, the reporter's notebook is one of the world's greatest mechanisms for accountability. By extension, Jupyter and the coding tools around it can be an incredible entry point for an aspiring journalist hoping to extend her reach and question the often invisible but undeniably powerful computing technologies that shape our daily lives. Thank you.